Yes. Hi, welcome to the January 24th Village of Buchanan special meeting and also workshop meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Comments from the floor, agenda items only. I do want to explain, we have our workshop, but we also have a special meeting this evening. Normally, I don't like to do special meetings. Meetings that we vote on are usually held at the beginning of the month. There has been occasions that I have had to do special meetings because of business that need to be taken care of or things that have come up. So tonight, we will be voting on something, and that's why this is a special meeting. And the reason is the developers that are here, AMS, if we waited, they would not be able to do anything until May. And the board decided that they like the project and they want to see this move forward. So, and that's why I'm doing a special meeting this evening. Under new business, presentation by AMS. Gentlemen, if you'd like to come and do your presentation.
Good evening. I'm Mark Creedon, President Eastman. I'm a principal. I'm a architect in charge for the project. We'll be joining a little bit with Mark Weindorf, who's the attorney representing AMS in a little bit. I think he's running a little bit late. And we'll go ahead and get started. Marcus, you do have the presentation?
Yeah, give me a second if I can share.
I've got it in my pocket. Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, trustees, staff, members of the public, thank you for taking the time to work with us over these many, many months on this project, and we're excited to present this project to you once again. Very similar to what we've seen in the past. Please go to the next slide. Mark, if you would. Thank you. Here, as you recall, look at that.
Sorry, I got a little delay here.
No problem.
Sorry.
Is purple today's color? I've seen that.
Have a little technical problem. Give me a minute.
Okay.
We can go ahead for the next the slide when it does come up is going to be a image of the site boundary. It's about 6 acres, a little under 6 acres.
There you go.
Great, thank you. As you recall, a little bit of refresher. North is page left as you're looking at it. Okay, just as a reminder. It's a little less than 6 acres. It's bordered on the west by Alvin Post Road, that kind of retail area with the hardware store and in the strip center. And then, of course, across Craft Lane on the north, really borders the site. And then obviously the power lines, utilities on the east side. So the next slide. The major site features, we've got power lines kind of on that east side, up on the ridge, as you're aware. There's the lake, of course, and the water feature setback that we have to respect. There's the large, it's very hilly on the side, almost a third of it is on slopes, right? Very difficult. That's kind of in the dashed green areas on the upper left as you look at the image. There's two opportunities that we're going to talk about accessing the site. One is off Craft Road, set back from the corner of Craft and Albany Post Road. And then we've also established a emergency alternate access point as discussed with the city. That's alternate emergency vehicle access. Again, that was the major site features. These things were sort of hemmed in all sides. It really left us one spot to place the building. Look at the next slide, Marcus. Thank you. So the slope analysis that was done by JMC, and we do have a representative of JMC here that can speak in more detail about this. But as we know, it's a very steep, hilly site. About a third of the area is sloped. In yellow, the slopes of 15 to 30%. It's about 15% of the site. The orange color is greater than 30%, and those are the ones we really are trying to stay away from. That's about almost 18% of the site. So between the steep slopes, the wetlands buffer, parking, it left just a little bit, one place really to place the building, which we'll review a little bit more detail on the next slide. So the design principles, as we relook at the site after working with you all for these many months, has been, we wanted to limit the steep slope impact. Obviously, it's important. We needed to respect the wetland buffer. We wanted to reduce the visibility of the building kind of as much as we could from the main, both Craft Lane as well as Albany Post Road. We want to have clear site access for residents, deliveries, visitors, emergency vehicles, which we established off Craft Lane. And then also, we placed more parking under the building than we had in previous iterations. So we reduced the surface parking. And by doing all of these things, we think we maintain and kind of improve the Albany Post Road streetscape on that corner. So, thank you. Next slide. So the building itself, it's a courtyard building, but with parking below, it's about a 62,000 square foot footprint on the site. It's 5 stories, so it's 4 over parking, wood frame on a concrete podium, 148 units with a mix of 1s, 2s, and 2 pluses. And then total gross building area is 221,000 approximately square feet. Next slide. So the ground floor plan, site entrance, as mentioned off Craft Lane, is the yellow kind of asterisk set back from the corner of the main entrance to the site. Ground floor is parking in the building, parking services in the lobby. We've got 162 spaces underneath in the parking garage below the building, short-term parking near the entrance, and 63 spaces on grade in the landscape surface parking area. Spaces per unit ended up calculating out to be about 1.52 spaces per unit. The slightly elevated view looking north, as you look across the lake, south-facing courtyard landscapes, suggested materials, stone veneer, cement panels, and trim. It's still in a state of flux. Design is very early. The color material palette, we always like to try to go with earth tones pulled from the site so that it blends with the natural elements of the surrounding area as much as we can. And that's kind of where we take our key from. Character, we expect it to be sort of transitional. That is to say, it's a little bit modern with a take on tradition, right? So it creates a contemporary but a warm and textured feeling of the building. Again, a slightly elevated view for clarity, looking, Craft Lane is kind of behind us. We're a little bit elevated, kind of looking over the surface parking in the foreground. Main entrance drop off and garage access on the lower right of the building as you're looking at it. Next slide, please, Marcus. Great. So this is a view looking northeast across 9A. It's kind of near Gallagher and Lindsay Avenue. It's kind of behind you. And with the hardware store in the foreground, kind of gives you a sense of the scale of the building as it's set back off Albany Post Road. And then I think the next slide, I think that's it for the presentation. So like the slide says, right? Thank you for allowing us time to share our approach with you. We appreciate all the effort that you all put in working with AMS and refining the approach for these many months. And the team is here to answer any questions you might have. Oh, hey, Mark. That's all right. Don't worry.
You are the most punctual village board I've ever dealt with. sorry, I was a couple minutes late. Good evening, Mark Weingarten of Bellton Allen, Weingarten, Wise and Utica. My pleasure to be here representing AMS Acquisitions LLC. You know that Ryan Sutherland is here from AMS as well as Mark Reagan, who you just heard from our architects at Perkins Eastman. Apologies for not knowing what we said the first 3 minutes. In any event, we've been before you on an informal basis. We've gone through it with you. I'd like to give you some highlights and talk specifically about the petition that's before you and the process that we're hoping to engage in with you. We've shared our vision for what we believe the site will be. Mark walk you through it. Of course, we'll answer any questions. But in order to be able to achieve the goals that we have for the site, there are some things that we need to do, technical legal details with respect to your code. So the petition that's before you requests a few things. It requests that the entire site be zoned to the C2 district. Right now, the site is split into 2 different districts. There's M1 light industrial district and the C2 district, and we're asking for the entire site to be merged into the C2 district. You also have in your code an ability to map an overlaid site onto the C2 district called the overlay C1, C2 district. And we were asking for your map to permit that also to be mapped onto the site. So the site, if we are successful with our request, it would have the entire site within C2 and the overlay of the C1, C2 would be put over that onto the zoning district. And then finally, we are seeking certain amendments to the C1, C2 district in order to achieve the project, the beautiful project, hopefully that you saw, that you would agree with us. I'm not going to go through the background on AMS. I think you've heard it before. If you'd like, we're happy to answer the questions. I don't have to repeat it. But I think what's important is for us first to talk a little bit about not only what you saw from Mark and what we want to do, but why we want to do it. So the reason we want to go, and then we'll go through the petition, is because we think this is the type of housing that's needed here in the village of Buchanan. It's starting to be built throughout other parts of Westchester County. And what do I mean by that? It means that your housing stock really needs to be diverse to have a thriving community these days. Today, for example, I had the privilege, and we appreciate the village administrator setting it up for us. We spoke to the superintendent of schools, and we were chatting a little bit about what might be some of the issues with the project, what might be some of the benefits of the project. But when we started talking about the type of housing that we wanted to build, and we started making it clear, we started talking about the possibilities and how it works in other areas of Westchester and why this is a great idea. One of the reasons, for example, is when you're trying to have your employees locate in a community like your staff, your teachers, et cetera, it's great to have other kinds of housing stock. Not everybody wants to buy a single family home. What you hope maybe is they start there in an apartment and then get to love your area and then move to a single family home. These types of apartments bring in people who are generally in what we call transition. So for example, those who are empty nesters, now they have an ability to stay in Buchanan because they really don't have luxury apartments of this type with these kinds of amenities that are available here. But I have a home and I want to sell it. I got to take the equity out and maybe I want to retire or get ready for retirement or just be able to sell. And I want to sell it, but I want to stay here because my family's here, my friends are here. Now you have an apartment, you can downsize and move in. You at least have that opportunity. And when we were speaking to the superintendent today, we also talked about the possibility that one of the reasons that your school district may be having a decline in enrollment these days is because you have this new phenomenon going on in Westchester County, maybe more before COVID in the last couple of years. People couldn't sell their homes. So you're out there, you have the home on the market, or in this instance, you're out on the market and you don't have anywhere else you really want to live. So you wind up having people like me whose kids have graduated from school, have nowhere else they want to go, but they have nowhere to move to because they say, I want to be here, but I have nowhere else. So I'd like to sell my home. And if you do sell your home, the likelihood is somebody with school kids is going to move into your house. So we even had that conversation. It's kind of almost a reverse thought that we may not be generating school children from our project, but it may very well be that one of the offshoots of who's going to be moving into these places are going to be people who have going to be selling homes and then having people move into their homes. And these are the kinds of things that we looked at in the economic studies that we're going to do, and some of the questions that came up, and that's why you talk to all of the various community members and community groups when you do projects like this to try to figure out to do something that's going to be, work for as many people as possible. And so when I mentioned that, and we were talking about it, when we know that when we're building of the 148, 56 one bedrooms and 98 two bedrooms, some with dens, you're not talking about generating school children very much. We don't believe that. Now we have to study it and we have to show it to you. But that's kind of how we present it, and I think we're going to be able to prove that. And I don't think that would be much of a surprise to the superintendent based on our conversations today, but we will remain in conversations with them. We also think we've provided for you now, when we look at the changes that we've made, are requested in the code, one of them, for example, is the parking ratio. So again, your code, for example, doesn't, as I recall, because I haven't seen all of it, I don't know the piece that comes to us. You don't differentiate between one bedrooms, two bedrooms, three bedrooms, four bedrooms. You talk per unit. So you have a ratio that's per unit. And you and I, we all know that a one bedroom unit generally has less cars than a four bedroom. And so therefore, we're primarily ones and twos. So we've asked for 1.5 parking spaces per unit, which I can tell you, in my opinion, is more than we're going to need. And that's, again, AMS and the experts believe that. And we think that's the right parking ratio. We will work with you on it. We will show you studies, but that's what we're requesting in your code, that for this particular zoning, for more than 5 acres, that it be a 1.5, it'd be a 1.5 ratio as opposed to, I believe it's 2.0, which is what it would be currently if someone was trying to do this. We also have requests with respect to the density. The density is something to achieve the numbers that we need to achieve. And we proposed 28 per, we use 40,000 square feet as opposed to an acre, it's roughly an acre. And we did 2018 acre with regard to the density that allows us to achieve the 143 that we're looking to do. And finally, the other change that we requested to the zoning is a height differential. I believe currently it's 3 stories and 40 feet, and we're asking for 5 stories and 65 feet. Again, that's the project that you've seen. We think it's been very neatly designed, and not only limiting the impacts to steep slopes and limiting the impacts to wetlands, but that from a visual impact standpoint, the uniqueness of the site, it's behind it's hidden from the main road, much of it by the hardware store, a lot of the lower part of the building as you drive by, it's set back off the road, etc. We think it's going to be very attractive the way it's done, and you certainly can see the pictures. As far as the process is concerned, and that's the last piece of this, we have asked that this be done through special permit, which is how you've done it in the past with other types of uses. You have special permits here. We've had the discussion at the board here previously that we think this should be, and you seem to think it should at least be studied. We're proposing a village board special permit. The process of that would be that we would come to you as we are now for this zoning petition. If you grant this zoning petition and create this new special permit with these changes that I've just described to you, we would come back to you after that, after the environmental review was finished, after that was finished, and we would come back for a special permit before you. It would be referred to the planning board. We would appear in front of the planning board. We would get their expertise. They would render their judgment and opinion, but it would be a non-binding opinion. They would vote and decide what they say with regard to the special permit. Good idea, bad idea, good idea, but these changes should be made, etc. That opinion, report, and recommendation comes back to you to make the ultimate determination with regard to the special permit and site plan. So that, in essence, is what we are seeking to accomplish with regard to this today. Is again the very first step. If you look to proceed forward with us today, what we are asking you to do is first officially accept the application for processing, and for which you're in the petition. And once that would occur, we're asking that you declare your intention to be lead agency in the environmental review process. You have the threshold decision of deciding whether or not to rezone this property. So we think it's very appropriate that you be the lead agency. That starts a 30-day period, by the way, where other agencies can say, no, it shouldn't be you, it should be us. And we'll talk about what happens if somebody else does make that determination. But we would ask you to declare your intent to be an agency, refer these papers out to all of the various agencies that are entitled to them so they can have their say in the matter. And then we will, at the end of that 30-day period, proceed with you along the environmental review process if all goes well. So that's our request this evening. Of course, we're here to answer your questions.
One thing I'd like to say, Mark, is we have been fortunate, especially under our transitional, what's going on with the closure of Indian Point. We've been very fortunate. The houses are selling very quickly. So that still continues. It's not like, there's a few now that are lagging, but usually it's a quick turnaround and the house is sold. And
I just, to be clear, and again, this wasn't my comment, Margaret, this was the superintendent's comment. It's not that you don't have a good market for sale. It's that there are people who aren't selling their home, even though there's a market there to sell them, because they have nowhere they want and rather be. So they're deciding to stay in their home, continuing to pay their mortgage, even though they have no school, kids in the school or anything else. But if they maybe had an alternative of a beautiful apartment that wasn't very far away, that was cheaper, and they could get their equity out of their house now, they might do that, and then somebody with kids would move in. So that was the superintendent's comment. Those were our discussions.
okay, all right. I'm just curious. Do you have any thought of what you would charge for your 1 and 2 bedrooms yet?
We're still working that out internally, and, as we go through the process and do the fiscal analysis, we'll start balancing the numbers.
Oh,
We'll sort of
Just
add up.
curious if you had.
We'll send it to you.
Okay.
I have some guesses, but I'll wait and see what the rest of it says.
Okay.
It's good, you're gonna look at it and go, really, that much, for an apartment in Buchanan, really? That's my guess.
Well, it's gonna be new construction too, so that
Yeah, that-
appeals
that's-
to people
And
also.
swimming pools and all, it's high end.
And we also have a swimming pool in the village too. So they can choose where they want to go. Do any of the board members have any questions or comments?
I have some, but I'd like the rest of the board members to, I'm sure they have some of the same questions that I do, I don't want to be the same.
All right.
I have no questions or comments. Thank you, Mark.
I'm good, I'm comfortable with it.
In going back to the design, and maybe the gentleman from Berkeley Eastman would be the best to answer this, but could you just go over where the emergency access was on that layout?
That was around.
Yeah, it's usually what the fire department wants.
Yeah, so because if you could, it's the second slide, I think that shows kind of context there. That's true. We're expanding.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back.
There. So next to the hardware store, just to the left of the hardware store, there's a dashed red arrow up there. That's where that occurs. And Marcy, we want to go forward a few to one of the route plans that we showed. Yeah, that's fine. You can't really see it, but it's same location at the corner of the parking lot, the lower right-hand corner of that surface parking lot. There's a paved area that allows in a curb cut, allow access to emergency vehicles in or out.
Okay, and that little sliver right there, is there any proposed use for that piece right there?
Over this area right here?
Yeah, that area.
Not right now. There's nothing proposed.
Yeah, no, it's actually some steep slopes to that sliver, so we want to leave that undisturbed.
And is there any
of course,
plans?
and of course, all this will be shared with the fire district.
Sure.
We'll get official approval.
And then is there any potential for use of the lake? Is there any, proposal to use the lake or access to the lake? Or is that completely blocked off?
I can't speak to that. I don't know who controls access.
Yeah, I guess this time, it's a visual amenity, perhaps we'll be walking out to it, but we know there probably is a technical hurdles to even any kind of improvements, to the lake or front of the lake, so right now, we're keeping it minimal.
It's not nearly as blue as you show it.
Yes, yeah.
You caught us.
So is the pond/lake, is that completely on the property? Or is
No,
it?
there's just a piece of it.
You see what the line-
Did you see the red
See-
line? All right. Okay. Because that would have been nice if it was completely, you could have done a little walkway around it, but.
Well, these are the, like I said, these are the kinds of things when we get to site planning,
Right.
we can certainly have conversations with you with regard to those things. At the moment, we're kind of keeping it big picture to see if the concept works.
I did have one question. In one of the renderings, it showed like a gazebo type structure. Is that just,
Right here?
yeah,
Like a
Right there.
stone.
So that portion is on the property and is up on a knoll, so that would be a nice amenity for the residents to be able to come up and use the outdoor space, have it covered and then view the pond.
Yeah.
I think Steve had another question.
Yeah, Mark, just one further question. The overlay district has a requirement of the commercial piece.
Mhm.
And I know in the original petition, we did see that commercial aspect there, and now in the revised, it's been removed. So can you just provide some color?
Just to be clear, I apologize for that. Apparently the wrong. The one with the previous, with the commercial was sent in the first petition that we sent it to you. I apologize for the error. We corrected that as soon as we found out it was the wrong exhibit that was put in there. In any event, we went through it with you as you know. We have constraints on the site, particularly wetlands and steep slopes, in trying to be able to achieve the goals of what we're trying to achieve. It's not necessarily the building of the commercial up front that would be the issue, but the provision of an adequate parking to do that required us to just do what we believe is too much of an incursion into the steep slope area. It goes beyond that. I know you've used in the past, or the planning board has used in the past, a standard of de minimis impact at 3%. We wanted to stay below the 3%. There was no way to do that and to put the commercial building in there, which is why we opted to do this, and we've created a zone with this particular use with the way we've provided it doesn't no longer has that requirement.
Thank you. No.
So I got a couple of things.
Sure, thanks.
There's still a for sale sign up on the property. I was wondering, why is the sign up there still? I know there's several owners who own that property. I know that it's under Gustav Enterprises on the tax map and on the Westchester County GIS. And one of those lots was for sale last year. I was just wondering if all three of those lots are under the same owner and why is it so?
To be clear, we are AMS is the contract vendee on the site. We don't own it, so we don't currently control it. We have a contract on it. If we get our approvals from you, we will close on it. We will build the property. So we don't currently have control over the property itself. That's still the owner. We are the prospective buyer as contract vendee. Under the code, we're permitted to come in with the landlord's permission. Do this and have to sign documents in order for us to do this and all that. But as far as the why this process, and I have no idea. We can try to find out.
Okay. So the approval of this project is contingent upon you purchasing it?
Yes, this is,
Okay.
it is a condition of purchase that there be an approval of this project, yes.
Okay. So in going over your application, there's a lot of references to the village's master plan. And can we go to the application? Sure. And also in the future, sometimes it's easier, what the board, what I used to ask for is the pages be numbered, so it's easier to reference. There's no numbering in here, so it might be a little hard to be on the same page. Right.
My apologies.
Okay, so under the discussion.
There are paragraphs.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, in the discussion of proposed amendments, the conformance with the master plan section,
What paragraph? you referred to?
I believe it's 19.
paragraph 19, that's correct, thanks. The community character, I'm sure everybody will agree that this project will make Route 9A corridor look better. It'll be easier for people with traffic, it's be better for streetscape. 2B-2, which is the reference number for the master plan, is where I kind of don't really start to agree with you guys. It says the tax base, the need for appropriately balanced tax base, residential, commercial, industrial land uses is important part of planning consideration. However, this does the exact opposite, this project. This takes it all away and makes it residential. There's no balanced tax.
I disagree with you
Okay.
completely. That comment in your master plan is referring to your village as a whole. And what we try to do in the context of the master plan is to do appropriate planning, so you don't concentrate too much in one sector or too much in another. Unfortunately, in the world we're probably living in, the commercial tax base is shrinking everywhere. So you do what you can to get those things where you can. But in my opinion, and again, all of these things that we're doing right now with regard to this petition are our opinions before the environmental review process is gone forward. So there's going to be a socioeconomic study, I'm sure, that Mr. Smith and others are going to require us to do as part of this environmental process. And then we will have the facts and information. These are our opinions going in. This is what we think, why we put it in the petition. But you're the ones who ultimately make the decision based on the information we'll supply you during the months that we're doing this environmental review. Is what the decision is. But in my opinion, what this comment from the master plan is stating, I don't have the whole thing in front of me, I just have the piece. We're talking about a balanced economic and mix of uses throughout the village and not just one particular sector. That's my opinion.
The next one, the amend requirements for the C2 district. This master plan was created in 2005. Last year, the C2 district, C1 and C2 district, as you had stated, has incorporated an overlay district in which the requirements of this amendment allowed for increased usage for residential. It doubled it for as of right and tripled it for a special permit. It also gave a whole host of other amendments such as lot coverage, setbacks, all kinds of things. And I believe that that overlay district satisfied 2B9. The C1, C2 district, as well as the M1 district are there to help your tax base. And I think that this goal was already achieved by the overlay district.
Well, it's only achieved by the overlay district if somebody builds something. It's not achieved if it's on a piece of paper and nobody does anything with it. It's great academic study. It's great for people to study, in the world, and I've seen it many times in law school land use classes. People study all sorts of things, and then they come in and have conversations with us about what's actually achievable. So it's nice to have comprehensive planning, and it's important. And you try to give the basic outlines of it. But if having done this for 30 years in various municipalities, that some of which I think have done, I remember what it was like when I moved my office for the first time into White Plains, and nobody showed up after 6 o'clock at night. It was empty. And they had a comprehensive master plan at that time that had office buildings in particular places. But now what do? The office market died, right? You have to start having other things. All of a sudden, they started building these large towers. I'm not suggesting that's right for Buchanan, but you have to have a planning sense within a community that's going to react to what you want and what the market is going to provide. And it can't be set in stone and say, this is what we wanted. This was 2005. Well, you're 15 years later. You're almost 20 years later. Have you achieved what you wanted to in 2005? Yeah, leave it the way it is.
Well, no, like I said, we did not achieve it, and that's why we revised it last year. And there is a project not very far from there that is taking advantage of our amendments and coming forth with a project in the near future. What I'm saying is that the goal of this section was already met. All right, and the reason why you have things in here, your analysis, is because it's a requirement of our code for developing properties. It's a requirement that we adhere to the master plan. Even though the master plan is not a law.
There, I disagree with you.
Okay.
You have to comply with it unless you decide to change it. Because this board has the right to change it. They can go through a process to change it, and they can do it in the fashion legally that we've asked you to. And there's also just comprehensive master planning that you can do on your own, as you've done in other places. So I would say to you, you're absolutely right. If 3 of the 5 members of this board agree with you, leave it the way it is, and we'll go do something else. If 3 of the 5 members feel otherwise and feel that what we've said here is we're not telling you to comply with the master plan. We're telling you that where we comply with it and where changes have to be made to be able to accommodate what we're requesting. So if you want us to achieve what we are proposing, you have to make those changes. So it's up to this board to decide whether to do that.
I understand. And under the waiver and modification requirements in our local laws, it talks about that. Okay. And what it says is that the board may waive such requirements provided that such modification or waiver will not have detrimental effect on the public health, safety, general welfare, or have the effect of nullifying the intent and purpose of the site development plan submission, official map, master plan, or this chapter.
Right.
So you're conceding that you're not in adherence with the
No, I'm not conceding. I'm saying that our plan is telling you where we comply and where we don't comply, and we'll go through it with you. But I can tell you, I'm absolutely confident that this board has the legal right to do exactly what we're asking them to do. And we can go through it with you piece by piece. But you can also, I'm not your lawyer. Talk to your own lawyer, have your own lawyer give you an opinion on it, because as far as I'm concerned, we're absolutely allowed to do this.
Okay. On, if you can turn the page.
Sure.
On 2C Tech 4, says promote a range of rental and home ownership opportunities in varied housing types and prices for village residents. However, they never completed the entire sentence.
Okay.
It says including those available for senior citizens and smaller households.
Right.
This does not.
Again, you're misreading what the master plan does. It's not suggesting.
I'm just reading the words of what it
It's
says.
not suggesting that each and every project accomplishes every one of the goals of the master plan. Does our plan, do we accomplish some of those? And we absolutely do. For example, this one stares you right in the face. We're creating a new housing stock of something that absolutely doesn't exist in the village. And when you want to talk about the economics, we talk about the economics with the superintendent today. So you know what, I'll take the few minutes if I might. I told him a story today that I'll share with you. I talked about in the town of Greenberg, when we were trying to create this type of housing for the first time, which was 15 years ago. Sorry, I'm actually that old, because 10 years earlier, we had started a project for a company called Avalon Bay. And Avalon Bay was one of the first to come into Westchester County and say, you know what, you guys really need rental housing in this area. You know, not just in the cities, but in some of the others. So they came to Greenberg on the border with Elmsford. It was town of Greenberg, unincorporated, but Elmsford School District. And they proposed up where all the office buildings were on Taxter Road to build apartments. 90 acres. It was the Robert Martin Company that owned the property. And they came in and they proposed apartments. They wanted to build something like 900 apartments. Not a chance. You can't build that much here. We're not going to let you do it. It went on for 10 years, they said. Finally, after 10 years, moratoriums, lawsuits, they let us build 108 units of housing. And I will tell you that, in fact, Mr. Smith, I think you were with the planning firm of Sicardi and Shift 15 or 20 years ago when that project was done originally, but I don't think you worked on that. John Sicardi did. And we worked on that and we were in all these meetings and went to all these various things. And long story short, we finally built it. And a year and a half later, it was fully occupied. And after it was occupied, we wanted to build more. So they said, do an audit of the building and see how many school children we have. There were 108 units, just 1 and 2 bedrooms, just like this kind of thing. There were 8 school children, 3 of which were public school children out of 108 units. And they had us with economics that said the school district breaks even if you had like, I think 35 or 40 school children. We had like something like 3 in the public school district. At that point, when they had fought us at this point for 12 years, not only did the next 444 units get approved within 4 months of just bang, they approved us. The Elmsford School District came in and said, this is the best economic thing that has ever happened to us, that you built this thing with all these taxes and we have no school children to speak of to have to take care of. But after we built those 2 and we were done, there was open space that we had committed to keep open for the community because, you know, they said enough density and everything. When that was finished, they wrote us a letter and told us to come build the next 69 units on the open space, that they would remove the restriction because they needed the units in the community wanted them on. So I can tell you that there are, in my opinion, this is what's needed here. And I can also tell you that after we added all those apartments on that border over there, those office buildings that started to be suffering over there all started doing a lot better because now all of a sudden they had places where their employees could live nearby to where the office buildings were. That's the world we're living in currently. The new and the younger people, we're building these live, work, play places where you have large enough places. They like to live near where they work. Sometimes they can work from home or they can go back to the place. They want to have places to go eat right nearby. They don't want things, the old master planning, which is where this all comes from, was put your single family homes in one place, put your commercial district in another place, separate it all out, we put it in separate zones. It's not the world we currently live in. So all the communities are struggling with how to work in this new environment because there are a lot of municipalities that are out ahead of you on this and have been doing it over the last 10 years and they're succeeding in it. So now we're saying, why not be better? It should be your turn.
So in the section 2C4, where you guys only use half of the sentence, in that same section.
There is a ...
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Nobody's telling you it wasn't there.
Oh, I know that, but it leads you to believe that it's just housing prices for general residents. But this section specifically talks to seniors, how seniors want to stay in the area. And that's why that sentence was written that way.
Okay, and by the way,
generally-
we think we're going to have a lot of seniors.
Well, that's good to hear because in 2C6, which you don't have listed here, which was right next to 2C4, it says that the village should require developers to set aside units at restricted prices for seniors, which is not in your plan either.
No, that's true. I mean, but there's no requirement in the code of doing it.
It's not in the code, no,
Right.
but in the furtherance of the master plan that you reference as reasons to,
No,
but you reference this as reasons to
not
approve it.
reasons to. We're showing you why we believe we comply with the laws of your community. So we've done it, and we've done, suggesting that as lawyers, we are advocating for a position. Yes, we are. And it's up to your professionals to say, oh, that's not accurate, or it's not completely accurate, and we don't completely agree with you. Okay, My job is to come out here and show you that this is what we want to do, and this is why we think it's a good idea.
I agree with you, but using half of a sentence to change its intent is somewhat
We
misleading.
didn't change its intent. We have a list there that tells you it's only half the sentence, which is how you knew to go back and check it. And secondly, I will tell you again, it wasn't our requirement to meet every single term of that. So the fact that it said senior citizen wasn't, it doesn't come to our project. It's not applicable. Because that's not what we're presenting. In fact, when this is built, we strongly believe, as most rental projects, and we'll see a lot of 55 and older empty nesters that are going to be living. In fact, it may even be predominant.
Okay, so on 2D2, commercial recommendations. As I previously stated, the overlay district already expands it and almost triples it. So I believe that it met that recommendation. In the draft amendment, as well as our resolution and the zoning text amendment, there's really no mention of the M1 district on the document you sent us. On the table of bulk regulation, on the bottom part, it only, and in our resolution, it only says C1 and C2. It doesn't say anything about M1.
That's right.
Because we're no longer at one.
That's right, because the property would have been zoned, C1, C2.
Right.
So
Our
M1 goes
proposal, when
away.
we're done, we'll have no N1 left in our.
But there's one specific lot, the most southern lot that is around the lake, which is only M1. So you're saying you're gonna have a lot line adjustment for your 3 different lots?
No, we don't own that. We won't, when we're done, we will own no N1 property. So, yeah, I don't know what you're referring to, and we can go through a survey map with you at some point if we have an issue over that. But our property, all of the M1 property that we own within what we're buying will be on C2. So we'll have no M1.
Okay. Okay. We can go to number 26, chapter 26, your analysis of under the state.
Yes.
Okay, so I would imagine that when you guys were drafting your environmental impact and doing it, you had reviewed our village code.
Sure. The petition?
Yeah. So and you do believe that New York State is a home rule, municipal home rule state, right?
Certainly has some rules.
Okay. So our local law states that structures over 40 feet are automatically a type 1 action. So you have,
Where's that reference?
local law 8311 says in addition to the following are deemed type 1 action. A project or action which involves 10 or more acres, or a project or action which involves the construction of any structure in excess of 40 feet. And according to
You
your,
said they got more than 10 acres, and then
and number 2, a project or action which involves the construction of any structure in excess of 40 feet. And according to your plan, it's 65.
correct, but I'm not familiar with that law. That's fine. That's in your village code.
That's our village code.
That's the.
And
then we will respond to that. Ironically, when we first sent the petition into you, it identified it as a type of action. We went through it with your professionals, found no reason to believe that we identified the same. It was decided to change it to unlisted because we did not see anything particularly with the seeker that determined it. But if in fact that's an error, it will be corrected and will be determined to be a type 1 action.
yeah, seeker, New York State seeker says that this would be unlisted. And like I said, we're a municipal home,
Which is what we said. Nobody here is suggesting that you are not allowed to have stricter guidelines than seeker. You can't do something that's less restrictive than seeker, but you can do something that's more
Yeah.
restrictive than the state law. So if you do have something that I was unfamiliar with that does identify that, we'll look into it. If that is in fact, we'll change that. We'll amend that, and it will be a type 1, it will be treated as.
So if we can go to your EAF, please.
We have our planner with us, but we didn't grab that, so it's just in case. Again, I was just- Good evening, my name is Aaron Warner, I'm with ATRF. This full disclosure, I am filling in for a colleague that did work on this and is going to involved on the project more than I have, but I'm not getting into questions, so.
Sure. In the C2 for adoptive land use plan, it talks about the comprehensive master plan again. I know you guys are gonna agree to disagree with me. I don't believe that this application meets the terms and conditions or recommendation of our master plan. I know you feel that it does. I really don't believe that it does. There's multiple areas. But I know we're not gonna agree upon that. So, that being said, let's go to, page 6 of 13. Okay, you say that you're gonna be, that your plans, does the proposed plan minimize the pervious surfaces and using pervious materials to collect and reuse stormwater? You say yes, but there's no, the stormwater management is listed as to be determined.
Correct, and so we were answering that as we intend for this design to go twice, but that is how we intend to do it. And in fact, if there are specific questions in the environmental review, we will be answering them. Right now, we're asking for zoning relief. You do a long form, which we did at this stage, where we don't have the design or the engineering yet finished, and you answer the question as best and as honestly as you can answer the question. There will then be additional information supplied, and you could actually then determine whether what we're saying is accurate or not. This is our best information as of right now, because you don't come into the fully engineered and designed project at this stage.
And
Yeah, I'll just add, we are obviously planning to do an expanded EAF. It's not just going to be the point one form, we're going to have a narrative with various topics that we'll work with your planner and consultants to deal with. And on the issue of type 1, just to step back, I mean, the only real requirement of the type 1 action is preparing a full EAF, which we've done. We'll continue to work with.
But it also has something to do with the time frame of seeker, when you could stop and start the, or continue the review process.
No, it has to do with the interest of whether or not it should be a negative or a positive declaration. It doesn't have to do anything with the timing, but that won't, as far as they're concerned, that won't impact the review.
Okay.
I mean, as I said, we originally proposed this as a type 1 for different reasons than the one that you pointed out. But we're not concerned. We can proceed on that basis if that in fact is what we will say.
On letter J, you said, will this proposed action result in substantial increase in traffic above present levels or generate substantial new demand for transportation? And you guys said no. I don't recall there being a traffic study, and also I know there's been plenty of traffic studies that have been done in that corridor because of some other development. But if you're adding 148 units where some of them are greater than 3 bedrooms, which
None are greater than 3 bedrooms.
no, our bedroom, 2 plus a deck. So that was your interpretation.
Well, first of all, that's certainly not greater than 3 bedrooms. Okay. 2 plus a day.
Either way,
We're still going to do a full traffic study. We'll work with their consultant colleagues. I think we've already been in discussions with them on the scope, as long as what ITE rate to use for the trip generation, what intersections, so we can. It's all.
well, then it should say to be determined, and yes, because you don't know.
No, again, you're entitled when answering this question to state, when you say the traffic study, is there an impact? It's whether or not we believe we're going to change the level of service at any of the particular intersections. We're not suggesting we're not adding cars. We are adding cars. It's an empty piece of property. We're adding people there who are going to have cars. The question is, will that have an impact on the traffic? Will we be changing the level of service in any of the intersections that we're required to study? We don't believe it. No, that's what we've stated. And again, we will have to supply you with the information to prove that out.
Well, I live on Gallagher Street, and I know how difficult it is to make a left-hand turn at certain days. And if you're putting 148 units, some greater than 1 bedroom, you're going to be increasing, and you want to reduce the parking requirements. You're anticipating a lot of cars. You have the potential to have at least 300 more cars going in and out of that facility.
I don't understand how we're lowering parking.
You're lowering the parking requirements
Yeah.
to allow you to have more cars in there.
No, not at all. We're lowering the parking requirements because we said we're not going to have as many cars as your code would say we would have. Your code would say, for example, you need to have 2 times 148, roughly 300 spaces, because you're gonna have 300 cars. And we're telling you, no, we're gonna have 1.5, we're gonna have some 225 spaces, because we're gonna have less than parking than we have been anticipated. So no, we don't think we're gonna be on that.
I respectfully
Yeah, and
disagree
well, you'll
because I
also
think
find
you're
out,
gonna have,
you're also gonna find out in the world that we're currently living in, and we're finding this in all the municipalities, that traffic is in some respects dissipating because of the simple fact that people don't all travel at the same time anymore. Where we lived in a time where everybody went to work between 8 and 9, and everybody came home between, 4:30 and 6, and they had peak hours, we still study those. A lot more people are they're working from their house and they're leaving, or they're going at different times of the day. And you wind up having less traffic going through a particular peak hour of an intersection. So we believe that when we finish the study, we will show you that nothing is going to be adversely impacted when it comes to the traffic.
well, there again, I travel that road several times a day. I know at 7 o'clock in the morning, it's harder to make a left than at 6 o'clock in the morning. I know it's harder to make a right-hand turn out of there at 3 o'clock in the morning. Either way,
And the traffic study will have numbers for that.
you also state that you're not gonna have any, I'm sorry, next page, 8. You're proposing, apparently natural gas, you're not gonna have, oil. Because you stated that you're not gonna have any, bulk oil storage. Does will the proposed action include any bulk storage petroleum over 1,000 gallons or chemicals 108? So I imagine you're gonna use natural gas.
With my understanding, it's pretty much standard.
Right, so it's very difficult to get kind of.
Whether they have that right now at all, and whether we wind up having to do electric, which these new bills that are coming out, we're all gonna find out what stories with that.
Sure. On page 10. D. Does have hazardous waste been generated or treated or disposed at the site, or does the project site adjoin property which is now or was at one time used to commercially treat, store, or dispose of hazardous waste? He said no. The hardware store used to be a gas station. It had several underground tanks that were there. Most of them, all of them were remediated. However, there was bulk storage there. There was some spills there, and the lake used to have cars in it. We used to skate on them. So that should be answered yes, because the adjoining property was a site that had bulk storage of petroleum products.
You have a phase 1 is in the company.
Phase 1.
When the property changed hands, they had remediated 3 tanks and then they found another 2, I believe. So there was a rather lengthy action that cost the seller some money. So I do believe that should be the,
We'll look into it.
on page 12. M, we say identify prominent wildlife species that occupy the site, they to be determined. However, on O, you say that there will be no threat to any of the species. How would you know that if you don't know what's going to be there?
That's one of the last page of this. So we generated this with the EAF mapper. So that answer on O is automatically generated by the state DEC's EAF mapper. Basically, you put in a pretty nifty, your address, it tells you, it runs against all the databases for hits on species, archaeology, hazardous materials. So that was automatically generated. So
Okay.
we know for a fact that DEC hasn't identified it. So it could be search species.
Thank you. That's all.
All right, thank you for bringing up the traffic, Sean. That was something I had highlighted. I wanted to ask a question, but thank you. The question was answered.
Absolutely. We've already discussed it, it's already.
I just wanted to ask one other question for the lake pond. I don't know. There's a number there. Are the lakes and ponds like numbered from the DEC what they are? Because there's like a series of 6 numbers there. I just thought that was.
That comes out of the EAF mapper also.
Okay.
And I think it tells you on the last page what that code means.
All right. That's my problem.
It's a class B lake for ponds.
Okay.
No, one other thing in our master plan, it says encourage the access to waterways, to wetlands. And your project actually kind of circles it, stops people from being able to walk through the woods and going into the pond. I'm wondering if there's any way you can get some public access for that area of it. Is that, well, you could have put that as one aspect of trying to forward the intent of the master plan.
Certainly something we can, certainly something that we could look at. There's no reason not, I mean, it's private property as of right now, so, but if, public access is something that this board wanted us to take a look at with some kind of walking trail or something, but I will tell you there's liability issues with that. It's certainly something we can take a look at.
Who owns the pond by the way?
Well, as I said, half the pond is on the property that we're purchasing, the other half is.
It's kind of, see, some of it is kind of property.
Is that the other piece? Yeah.
So you would think kind of on top of a lake?
We believe so.
Okay.
Does the board have any other questions? Comments?
Mark, thank you for answering all these questions. I mean, you did a thorough job.
So again, David, we're hoping that we would get an effectively maybe we can see solution this evening so we can get the 30-day clock ticking.
There's a resolution currently before the board.
Teresa.
I have the resolution. Yeah, I have it. I just, I'm not sure if there's anyone in the audience that would like to comment also. It's not on the agenda here, but there is somebody here from our planning board that might like to make a comment or question. Yes, sir. Mr. Nick Zachary, step up to the podium.
Thank you. I have a thought on the traffic. There's another site plan review that's going to be going on a little further down 9A. And there will be, more traffic generated. It may not be a precise rush hour every day, but there will be some more traffic generated by both. And yet each one will be doing a traffic study separately. And this question kind of goes to the planner, David. The two projects and the possible cumulative effect, is there any way that the traffic studies can be correlated to each other? And, because, if you look at one individually, it may not take into account that there'll be additional impact. I'm not a traffic expert. I'm kind of thinking that the solution along the lines of what's up on Route 202, where there's parts of it have a turning lane, a third lane just for turning, could be a good solution, but I'm not an expert on traffic.
So I'm not a traffic engineer, but I do have a driver's license. My attempt, thank you. So the answer to your question is when this project is being evaluated, the traffic study, part of that is looking at the, Trustee Murray had mentioned about the hours of roadway operation. So they'll evaluate the roadway traffic for a certain segment of time in the morning and then in the afternoon. And that's how they'll determine what is the quote unquote peak hour when you have the most traffic. They'll then assign a growth. Typically, they use DOT standards of 2% per year growth factor, so that traffic volume will grow a certain point over a certain amount of time. And then they'll assign the traffic not only from this project and from the other project that's being considered down the road onto the roadway network. They may look at other projects that are happening in the area, north or south,
Yeah.
and accommodate that traffic as well into the.
Okay, so there's kind of a built-in mechanism to.
Yes, you're comprehensively evaluating the development projects within the area on the local roadway network.
So the left hand will know what the right hand is doing, so to speak.
That's correct. Right, and part of this, big part of this is that New York State DOT, because it's their roadway, they have a very big say in the traffic volume that comes out of the roadway, what the impacts are, whether there are improvements that need to be made. Those are all under the jurisdiction of the system.
Thank you.
Nick, just besides traffic, one important aspect when we had the discussion with the DOT, is not only traffic, but pedestrian safety as well. So that's going to be
Yeah, yeah.
incorporated in that review as well.
And one question, looking at the initial site plan that you showed there, where there was 60 some odd parking spots just set in off of Route 9A. And behind that, it looked like a landscape area. Is that intended to be like a public space landscape area or like? Yeah,
Yeah.
behind the,
Behind the surface lot in the front.
yes.
It's the back side. Yeah, no, those were primarily, that's where some of the steep slopes in the area were, so we completely avoided them and we're going to the actual.
Here you go.
Yeah, right there, that's with, and you can see the lines that are on there, that's a steep slope area. We're keeping that there, and just again, I don't know what Mark went through, because I got here a couple minutes late. We very intentionally put the parking underneath the building, right? Because we wanted to, one, limit the amount of coverage that we were creating, and also to create the down parking. So we put as much of the parking as we could underneath. We put this in this area, and what you're pointing out here is the reason I was talking before as to why we were having problems fitting more commercial to the front next to the hardware store, is because it would require us to create parking and move up into that area, and that's where the steep slopes are. We wanted to avoid. That's why we're avoiding.
Okay, and is there a sidewalk in the front of that parking? Where that dotted red-
There are front
red line is?
sidewalks, yes. Before the river comes in. I think that's required in your zoning, that you have
That-
sidewalks
that is-
all along. Yes, it's in there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I just wanted to mention on the traffic, just for edification, because we're second in line, we are required to study any project that's been proposed prior to us showing up. So some people might ask, how do you coordinate them? Frankly, you don't have to. The ones that came in first, they study theirs, but we have to now come in and add their traffic to ours. That's how it works.
Okay.
Installing sidewalks is not a requirement of our zoning. It's part of our streetscapes and part of our design criteria, which we adopted last year. And that's a guideline to be used by the planning board. When any applicant came to us on Albany Post Road, the planning board had requested as part of the requirement of their site plan to install them, but it was not governed by law, it was governed by the site plan review.
So you're gonna give us a check mark.
I did, actually, I did. I said I agreed with your first one. I didn't agree with any of your other ones.
Thank you.
And that's a conversation going forward we'll have about the sidewalks. And just quickly across the street, we almost have a completed run north to south on 9A. Your side of the road, that's gonna have to be a discussion of what we do, because it's never gonna be a continuous. That's just because of rock and properties and et cetera, et cetera. So to be discussed later on. Eileen.
Okay, Nick and I took a ride over to look at Carbone's property at 3095 Albany Post Road. You guys have the best part of the lake. It just looks better than the big part with the tires and the toys and then whatever else is in that part, like come in. On this, could you put that thing back up? please?
Which one?
This is fine. The part that you say has steep slopes that leads onto Third Avenue, the small part. How wide is that?
This right here?
No.
That's
This one right here.
So where are you?
This sliver.
The strip that you strip.
This one right here.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
About 30 feet.
Could that possibly be a pathway for the apartment dwellers to get to the strip mall with Dunkin' Donuts and Hellman's and all the rest, or wherever they're on the block?
Yeah, this.
Because that also leads, people walk around the high school and all the rest.
That's a great point. We originally were looking at that potentially as access, for car access as well, but it didn't work well because of those steep slopes and some of the.
Right.
So we just essentially have left it blank, but that's great, because we just haven't designed it at this point, so that's something that we certainly consider.
Good point.
Thank you, Eileen.
Okay, so we We are going to move on to resolution. Village Buchanan resolution declaring notice of intent to act as lead agency for proposed zoning text and map amendments to the C1, C2 overlay district special permit and site plan approval for the development of unimproved property located on Albany Post Road and also known and designated on the tax map, the town of Portland as section 43.20, block 3, lots 16 and 16A and sections 43.20 and block 2, lot 2. Whereas on or about January 2023, representatives of Buchanan Development AMS LLC, the applicant, did submit a facially complete petition to the Village of Buchanan Board of Trustees, the Village Board, for an amendment to the zoning map of the Village of Buchanan and amendments to the zoning code of the Village of Buchanan generally affecting the C1, C2 overlay zoning district, the proposed zoning amendments. And whereas Article 12, Section 211-53 of the Code of the Village of Buchanan provides for the process and procedures for amendments to the village's zoning code, and the applicant has provided a draft of the proposed zoning amendments along with other supporting documentation. And whereas in relation to the proposed zoning amendments, the applicant will also seek from the Village Board a special permit to allow for the application of the C1, C2 overlay district to the subject site and a site plan approval for the redevelopment of the subject site for multifamily residential development. Collectively with the proposed zoning amendments, the proposed action. And whereas on January 24th, 2023, at a regular, no, not really a regular schedule, special scheduled meeting
Mhm.
of the Village Board, the board did review and discuss the proposed zoning revisions, and whereas the Village Board, under section 7-700 of the New York State Village Law and Article 12-211-53 of the Code of Village of Buchanan, is the only duly authorized legislative body that has the authority to approve the proposed zoning amendments. I'm sorry, this is a really long resolution, so just bear with me. Whereas, after review of the petition, the Village Board acknowledges that there are other interested and involved agencies as those terms are defined under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQA, or Part 617 of the New York State CRR, that should be notified of the Village Board's intent to act as lead agency. Now, therefore, be resolved, the Village Board pursuant to Part 617.6 of the New York State CRR hereby determines that the proposed action is subject to CEQA and is an unlisted action.
Madam Mayor. So
Yes.
that part, based on the discussion tonight, there should be a revision.
Okay,
It
thank you.
says that the proposed action is subject to seeker and, based on specific requirements in the village code, classify the action as a type 1.
Okay, thank you. As after I read it, I was like, wait, we just discussed this. Okay, so is subject to CEQA and based on
Specific requirements
specific requirements
in the village code,
in the Village Code,
classify the action as a type 1.
classify the action as type 1. Thank you. Be it further resolved that the following agencies identified by the EAF and using all due diligence and interested for involved agencies for the proposed action and should be provided a copy of this notice of intent to act as legal agency. Village of Buchanan Planning Board, Village of Buchanan Zoning Board, Town of Portland, City of Peekskill, Westchester County Department of Health, Westchester County Department of Planning, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and New York State Department of Transportation. Be it further resolved that the Village Board hereby directs that a lead agency coordination notice be circulated among the interested and involved agencies together with a copy of this resolution, the proposed zoning amendments, the EAF, and other such information as is appropriate, indicating the Village Board's intent to assume the role of lead agency for the proposed action under SEQA. And that a minimum of 30 days to comment on the board's intent to act as lead agency, and that any correspondence on this matter be directed to the Village Administrator's Office at 236 State Avenue, Buchanan, New York, 10511. So, on a motion to approve the resolution, can I have a second?
Second.
On a question?
On a question? I'm a little confused, Stephanie, as to why we're allowed to have a resolution to change all of our local laws in reference to site plan approval, to special permit, to a whole host of things. Because our code states that no provision of the New York State code shall be construed to repeal, modify, or substitute an alternate to any local zoning or other regulations within the village of Buchanan, where the village of Buchanan codes are more restrictive. Also, our legislative intent for our planning, section 21134, legislative intent suppression of village law. That's the title. The article is hereby adopted pursuant to local law 7, not local law. Municipal law 725, New York State law, under the authority of municipal home rule. It is the intent of this section to supersede Act 725 of village law by expanding the powers and authority of the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals regarding review and approval of site plan. However, nothing herein shall be construed to reduce or limit the powers or authority granted to the planning board by 725 and its intent in this article that the planning board shall retain all such powers and authority.
Is that our code you're
This
reading?
is our law, yeah.
Our code?
Yes.
Correct, and that's why we are changing that. We're doing a code, an amendment to give the authority in this particular, well, 5 acres or more, I think I'd have to read it, to allow the village board of trustees.
Then
To do
that
that.
changes everything in our code, everything in our law. By using a resolution like this is basically saying you can change our entire code just by a resolution. You could
This-
say you can have an adult entertainment center down the street by a resolution.
But this isn't changing it. We're noticing your intent to be lead agent. We're gonna have public hearings.
Yeah, but our code specifically designates who the lead agent is.
Yes,
It specifically designates all of the authorities in which the village board will be taking over. So in essence, by using a resolution, you are changing all of our laws when it comes to site plan approval.
no.
Can we heard?
Yeah.
Sure. Can you help?
This resolution is simply starting this process and is talking about creating a lead agency and a referral out of the information to others. If in fact we go through this process and this board determines to do successfully, they're going to say yes to our request. We are going to be making changes to the village ordinance.
Yeah.
And those changes in the village ordinance will grant those powers. So if we step back under village law, which is New York State law, which is where this all emanates from, all of these powers are vested in your board. You as a village board, your predecessors, took certain powers because you're permitted to have a planning board, invested those powers in the planning board. You as a village board have the right to limit that on any basis you desire. You don't have to have a planning board. Yeah, you do, but you don't have to have it. So the bottom line is, I understand that you have code provisions, and those code provisions say this is the way it works. But it's oftentimes, and I can tell you it's throughout Westchester County, you have codes, they conflict all the time. So for example, in the town of Greenberg, it says the planning board has absolute site plan authority, except if it's more than 5 acres. That's something that's so bad and so of such importance that the town board itself is going to be the site plan approval agency on that, not the planning board, which is exactly, by the way,
What we're doing here.
what we're suggesting to be done here. So the village board has the authority, it has the right, and it does in fact, to be able to grant those authorities over the planning board, but you also have every right to reserve those in yourself. So there's nothing in here that you're suggesting that it's illegal or violative of the code. It's not, because the ultimate authority here is village law under New York State law, and you are underneath that, and that's what you're following.
Well, yes, and I agree with you 100%. However, under municipal home rule, we are allowed to create laws and regulations that are more stringent than
Yes.
New York State.
Yes.
I don't believe that the intent and the legislative intent, even our code, it states, nothing is intended to take away the roles, responsibilities, and authority of the individual boards.
So if you are, in fact, and you're correct, have the right to create, to pass laws and create more restrictive laws that are there, they're also allowed to change them in a different direction. It's that you don't have to, once you change the law, that's not the way it is for eternity. The next board comes in. In fact, you don't have the right to go ahead and tell the next board that comes in. There's all sorts of law that's out there that says you can't bind the later board. You can't make a decision that says this goes on for 10 years because your authority ends when the term ends. And then the next board comes in and it either readopts or it goes through and it goes forward, has the right to make changes. That's all this is.
Well, and I agree with you in that aspect. However, when we want to change one of our laws, there's a process to go through to change the law. It's not just done by resolution. We would go through this with multiple times. We were going through with the accessory apartment law, we were going through with water rights, we were going through a whole lot of law.
But
And
It will be the same process.
the lead agency is dictated in our code for this type of project to be governed by the planning board. It states the planning board shall be the clearinghouse for all lead agent site plan approval.
And
It
we're,
specifically states that.
This is not site plan approval. As of right now, it's special permit.
We have a process, and this resolution is circumventing our process for speaking. Okay. So-
I'm in the middle of a vote.
Maybe not a million oversaw the question.
Well, on a question, but I have Nick raising his hand and I can't. 'Cause
No,
we're-
you can't.
Yeah, I can't. I just wanted to explain that.
All right, well, like I said, the legislative intent of our code, the legislative intent of our rules for planning, for everything. Specifically dictate, and they specifically lay out the roles and responsibilities of each independent part of our village. Lead agency is the purview of the planning board. It states the purview of the planning board as the clearinghouse to determine that. I do agree that the village board is the only one that can change the zoning requirements. Whenever we've changed zoning laws, we've always had a draft local law as well as a 30-day public hearing or 30-day notice for a public hearing.
and we will.
Okay.
We will.
That's fine. But I don't think that this meets the intent of our code. Sorry. I think it's in direct violation of Article 10, Articles 2 or 7, a whole slew of them where it specifically says planning board and their roles and responsibilities. Your state law might say you can be, the village board can be a planning board. There's case law to that, especially in the Article 78 proceeding, which has been ongoing multiple times. But I just don't see how this is legal and it violates the intent of our code. Thanks.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Carried.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you.
Have a good night.
You want to go right into the workshop agenda now?
You want to adjourn the meeting? Oh, no, I adjourned the.
You have to adjourn the special.
Yeah.
I was being funny.
Okay, so it's
On a motion to close the special meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So let's go right into the workshop. Nancy Bayer, our recreation supervisor, I saw her. Nancy, first thing on the agenda is regarding camp fees and counselor hourly rate. So please come up to the podium. Hi. So we're going to have a discussion on the camp. So.
Sounds good. I would like to increase, are we ready?
Sure.
Okay, I'd like to increase the senior salary wage to $15 an hour, which is minimum.
Is this one?
Yeah.
So I sent the email out, Dan and Steve
Okay.
recently responded. So I know what your thoughts are.
So the rate
I sent
is
that to you,
$15 an hour,
that's minimum wage.
and that's what your increase is.
That's what I'd like to increase the senior
Just bring it up to me.
wage,
And what was the previous?
12.
Well,
And I just upped that last week. But
Yes.
what they do and how hard they work and Because once somebody is 16, I can put them in any position that I technically want to have them in. The senior counselor takes on the most responsibility. And I think that by increasing to minimum wage is respectable. A lot of them are out of college already. Some are seniors in high school. But once they turn 16, I can put them in any position I want. And some of my 16-year-olds are better than some of my 19-year-olds. Which I think is true in almost any camp probably. But they work really hard. And to draw more attention to our camp, to get more interest in our camp, I really think we have to step it up. Everything is costing more. A sandwich down at the market costs more than their hourly wage. I feel bad for that. So I would really like to do that. So do you guys have any other questions from what I've already emailed you back with?
Marcus, do we have to, we're not responsible for minimum wage in this situation.
No, we're
correct?
not.
No, yeah. It's whatever the board decides.
But I want it to be attractive to people. I want them to say, hey, this is something, a lot of kids want to do it. It's 6 weeks. It's only 29 days. It's not their whole summer. It's not their weekends. It's not even their evenings.
Do you know what the town of Cortland senior camp counselors get?
They're changing it. They're changing it every year. So I don't know what they're getting this year. But we were in par with them last year. Okay, and I know they're raising their lifeguard fees and everything as well, because they need the counselors. We all need the counselors.
Mhm.
I'd like it to be a little bit more attractive. I'm not interested in raising the step in rates of the junior counselors or anything like that. The senior counselors, I think, deserve it.
And the senior counselors, you have more senior counselors than you do.
No, I actually usually have more junior counselors than I do senior counselors. And that's another issue. Sometimes like they all take vacation. They can tell you they're not, but then, as camp counselor, I'm taking this week off, I'm taking 2 weeks off, or now I have to take this day and that day off. So then my junior counselors step into their position.
And what's the age range for the senior counselors? 6,
16 and older, but generally it's senior in high school or out of high school.
So what defines the senior counselor? The number of years they've been there?
No, the position that they take. The senior counselor oversees the entire group. They are able to delegate tasks to the junior and CITs. And they are responsible for the majority of the paperwork and things that get turned into us. So it's their responsibility to know where everybody is. It's their responsibility to make sure things get done on time. Their responsibility to make sure that the junior and CIT counselors are taking care of the children as well as that. More eyes, more ears, more better.
And how many senior counselors there are total?
Generally, I hire between 14 and 17. I had 14, I think, last year. And what's, every year it's different. Some years, like in 2019, I didn't have anyone quit. I didn't fire anyone, which was really nice. But usually every year, last year we had 3 quit, fired 3. One girl came in just for one day and she was a CIT. It was just too hot for her. So we get things like that.
And
And I actually hired 3 people as well. After the 3 people quit, I hired 3 more people right then and there.
then you also had mentioned to us about increase in the rate.
The camp fees. I
Camp
just
fees.
did a simple 5%, but to be honest, we could definitely do more than that. I have that, you have all that. I sent that to you.
Yeah.
But I have
and,
that.
So just so the board knows, the rate for the camp counselors in the town of Cortland is $13 an hour.
Oh,
They're raising it $1.
they are raising it.
Just $1.
You're 14, right?
No, to 13.
Yeah, Peter's trying to add to $14 an hour.
They haven't gotten approved yet, though.
Oh, yeah, that's me. Yeah, but it's applied today at $14 an hour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
that was
listen
just
to
came
that.
out. Yeah,
So it's $14.
yeah.
So, I mean, we are in step with them, which is,
We are in step with them,
Yeah.
however,
Good job, Pete.
why can't we do better than them?
no, I mean, if it makes it more attractive to get more counselors, I agree with you. I was under the impression, somebody mentioned to me that it was $18 an hour.
Oh.
And I didn't understand that.
No, not my
No.
counselors.
No, I mean, 15 sounds reasonable for a senior counselor. How many senior counselors? 17 I saw on your spreadsheet?
14,
Roughly,
17.
my average is 17 for senior counselors.
Uh-huh.
If I can get that many. I
Yeah.
didn't get that many last year. So I had to put some of my junior counselors up into a senior council position. Every year is very different. It's, you know, this year they didn't really want to work.
So the enrollment
2019
went up.
They did.
Yeah, I see that the enrollment went up.
Well, 2021 was a COVID year. We were only limited on our enrollment.
From
In
19.
2019,
Mhm.
I ran it differently. I offered a minimum of 3 weeks, 4, 5, or 6. That is very, very hard to do. I was not planning on doing that this year. I went back to my 6 weeks or 3 weeks.
So nobody quit last year?
This past year,
Yeah.
Oh,
3
yeah.
people quit.
3 people quit.
Yes.
What was the reason for quitting?
Oh,
Was it anything to do with the salary?
entitlement? No. Entitlement.
Drama.
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 Oh, that's a good word. Thank you.
Kids these days are entitled? You're kidding.
But you know, if, I think they deserve it. I do. We
So
get
how-
really
how-
good, qualified, and people who coming back. I looked at my numbers. I'm sorry, what?
How many families are out of the village that
69
utilize
out of 100.
69?
No, you had asked me, hold on, I have it. Yeah.
About 60% out of village.
You said how many campers were residents versus non-residents?
Yeah.
69 were residents, 154 were non-residents. Most of them are non-residents. They pay a much higher rate, but that rate is still not as high as anybody else around us. So even the non-residents are still getting a really good deal.
Yeah.
So I am not opposed to raising it more than the 5%. That's up to you guys.
But then again, we can't compare apples and oranges because I think the town also, don't they still provide
They
transportation?
did not last year.
Oh, they did.
I do not know if they're doing it this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's news. All right, so it's something, you know, the board will have to make a decision on and we'll vote on it
Yes.
at the, oh, but you needed,
If you could kind of
needed an
say-
answer by the end of the month.
I intend on getting my papers out to my staff, and I would like to get the camp information out to the elementaries. I physically handed out to them as well as having it online.
You gotta get the kids before they get other jobs.
Oh, yeah, no, I know.
I think it'll just attract more counselors if we say, hey, FYI. You know, $15 an hour for senior counselors, and it's first come, first served. Well,
we-
kind of.
are we
I
also-
still interview them, and if I don't think they're a good senior counselor, I won't offer them that position, obviously. But I already know some juniors who are going into their senior years who I will absolutely have as senior counselors.
Nancy, are we increasing the rate for campers within the village as
Yes,
well?
everything was 5% straight across the board. And you have those numbers too?
Yeah.
Okay, we do.
I just don't have them in front of me.
I have them. You want me to give them to you?
So for 3 week right now for village resident,
Right now, it went from
How could you?
300 to 315. For a 6-week resident, it went from 550 to 578. And then, of course, we have the 10% off for the siblings, which that was a non-resident for 3 weeks was 460, it is now 483. And a 6-week for a non-resident was 870, it is now 914. And that still beats any other camper.
so. We can't vote on it tonight,
That's fine.
but you'd like some direction.
Yes.
If the intention is to move forward, she gotta get the paperwork together and
Because I'm only part-time, and I do have 2 other jobs. If you want to. My time is limited. I have been working a lot more at home at night. But, you know, some days when I work 10-hour days, I don't have homework. I'm like, I don't want to go still.
So is that something the board would be interested in entertaining or? Do you need more information? What is it you would like to do?
I have no problem with the $15 increase for the senior counselors.
Thank you.
I think we may want to take a look at the fee structure. Yeah.
I agree. Okay. Are you opposed or?
Because I think at least for non-residents, I think we should be charging a little bit more.
Okay. Well, town of Portland's over $1,000 already.
Yeah.
Even that's just the resident too.
So,
Alright. I did send that spreadsheet that the RAPS committee had done. About the local, that was based on if you turned in your numbers and stuff, like what camps charge. And things like that. What are your thoughts?
Sounds good. I approve any fee schedule or any cost increase, decrease, whatever you want. You have my approval or well, you have my consent. Let's put it that way,
I hear you.
for the next 80 some days.
What about you? Anthony, what are your
I
thoughts?
approve of it. I think it's makes us competitive with the other.
Yeah.
With the other camps, but. I mean, I'd like to see what other camps in the county are doing, but it just keeps us in par with them, so I'm good with it. I think it's a good idea. If it brings in quality counselors, then definitely.
Okay,
So, have your answer.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions for Nancy while she's here?
I know that.
something else. With the fee
All right, if you have
schedule.
any questions, feel free to email me. I can check my email on a regular basis.
All right. Thanks for coming in, Nancy.
Nancy, I just want to say one thing, that the email that Dan sent to you
Which
in
one?
regards to the part-time work was in regards to $18 an hour. It was just regard the email,
Okay.
because it was just bad information, that's all.
Okay, that's enough.
That's what you're getting at right there.
Well, my whole thing was, I don't see how a ski attendant takes more per hour than our highway department part-time. Just makes no sense. But
Next, we're gonna talk about porta potties. We have a few residents asking for a porta potty over in the Lens Cove, and Marcus has gotten some information for us.
Yeah, I asked Scott to take a look in some possible porta potties that are not really regular porta potties. So he found one that actually has a toilet, a urinal and sink with running water. It's $300 a month. That includes delivery and weekly cleaning. Also include toilet paper and towel refill. They'll do that for us as part of that cost. They also refill the water for $20 every time they fill the water, but DPW said they probably can do that themselves, but they get trained to do that. So the idea, if you want to do that, I can incorporate it for next year's budget. We could start it in May, maybe go to the beginning of the winter and then cut it off so people can use it. We can see how it's used, and then as the monthly, so if the board wants to remove it, we can. If we want to stretch it out, we can as well. So just bringing it up, so there's a couple of residents brought up at the last meeting. Want to give them an option, see if that's something you want to do.
Are we responsible for damage?
No, if something happens, is there the porta potty
The
responsibility?
sink,
Yes,
the
yes,
urinal, I
That's-
mean, there's a lot of components there that we
Correct.
could be responsible.
that's all part of the $300. They take, we don't have to provide, if they,
Because it's gonna get trashed.
oh yeah, if it does that, then we can just take it away and that's it. If people start destroying it, that's my concern too, especially where it's located.
That's what happened when we had our bathroom over there years ago. That ended up getting trashed.
Yep. So something if you want to
Was it
consider,
being locked on a regular occasion? or-
I think they were breaking in.
yeah, they break into it.
Oh, it's dark.
I mean, I think it's a good idea to have it there, so for public access when people are walking on there, and we have the sidewalk that continues.
Correct.
Yeah, 'cause
To
you
that
can walk
location
past
now.
a lot of
Yeah.
park
Which
there.
is good, but as long as we can monitor some
Yeah.
aspect.
We can try that. If something happens, we could always remove it and say, you know, that's what happens. Is that something you want to consider just to try it out for a couple months and see how it works out?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah,
Good.
because there's no other porta potty along that whole walk.
No.
path.
No.
And if people are parking there to start their walk, to the riverfront, then.
Correct.
Some people
Especially for
also
residents.
park there by the water, so. And I forgot to mention when Nancy was here, we had talked at one time about doing some type of a camera system at the. Is he talking?
so
We were
I guess,
talking about doing some type of camera system for the pavilion. for
Yes.
camp. I don't remember what the resolution of that is, and if we have problems with the porta potty, maybe we could, put a camera in over there too, just food for thought.
sounds good. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so at our February 7th meeting, of course, the approval, the usual thing. Then we have amending the code for the accessory apartments. We're gonna have a discussion about that. There is a lot going on in the state. I don't know where we're gonna end up with the ADUs. I'm on a subcommittee with the Westchester Municipal Officials Association. They're working on some things. The legislative conference up in Albany, February 5th through 7th. There's gonna be discussion on that. And also the governor has not put out her budget yet. It should be very soon or the beginning of next week. So I just think, and especially I kind of look at what the response was by the county planning board, which I'll read at the meeting because we're still gonna have to open up the public hearing. But I think under the circumstances, we're gonna discuss it. Under the circumstances, I think we just need to let it be. Our accessory dwelling unit law.
Just so I already received some of the changes that the state is considering doing. I attended a managers meeting where a representative from NICOM was there. The belief is that the accessory unit will be incorporated into this new law that they're talking about. So it's they're thinking the accessory unit might be dead, but it's going to be incorporated in this new law. So everybody's waiting to see what happens. So you're absolutely right. Everything might change.
Yeah.
And those changes are substantial as well. So it'll be interesting what that comes out of the governor's office.
I think the first flush was 800,000 more units
Yes.
in 10 years. Each municipality is gonna have a goal. So,
Ours would be 3%.
we're considered downstate.
Correct.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were borderline or, so 3% of the housing stock.
They haven't made a determination 3% of housing stock or 3% of your population.
Oh,
They haven't said that either. They are unclear on that too.
I thought that draft said 3% of the stock to increase yearly. And then to be, if you met those goals, it will be reduced to 1% for a certain time.
No, the way NICOM explained it to us is 3% within 3 years. You have to meet the 3% within 3 years. And if you do affordable units, you get a credit of 2 units for 1 unit of market rate housing. So that's a lot of missing information that we still have to receive, but they're going to incorporate new housing stock with the accessory unit possibly. So we're still waiting what's to happen. NICOM is trying to gather all the municipalities together to come as a block to try to fight this up in Albany.
Is there any caveat in this law for the amount of available space to put them in? As you know, we're 95% incorporated, I believe, right now. And 43% is based on utilities. So is there any calculation in that 1 to 2 or 3% to take into account open space that we have available for development?
No.
Or are they just trying to increase the density per lot?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. That's why zoning will not mean anything in the state eyes.
Say again?
Zoning, they'll supersede local zoning to try to increase the lot coverages by having more units in every single
Well, it's
housing.
not
unit.
increasing lot coverage, it's increasing density.
Yeah, but you might have to build more on vacant land in order to accomplish their goal. So we'll know more in a month or so.
to be discussed, discussion goes on, and I know they're very hot on the TODs, the transit oriented districts. They're looking to really bump that up and really work that because they feel they can get quite a bit of density in those areas. And I know the town has in their 2015 master plan, it was they were looking at a TOD.
And that's an interesting question too. It's a half-mile radius around every single train station. And so I asked a question to them, we have Peekskill in the town. We're within a half mile of both. So we're half mile, definitely, probably half a mile from Peekskill train station. If you go that way.
What do you think, we're 2,500 feet from the railroad? From the train station?
Not
No,
from Beach.
no, for Montrose.
I don't think from either one.
Okay, that's even better. Okay.
It might be as a crow flies.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, that was my concern too. Yeah.
Even if you were to run the tracks, I don't think it is.
Okay, so we should be good with that then. That's good.
We might have been when the Montrose train station was there, but not when Montrose closed.
Good. Okay. Perfect. That's good news. At least for us.
So, since we have a public hearing scheduled, we have to open it and we'll,
Yep.
take no action if that board feels that's what we should be doing. Also, we left a public hearing to consider amending the code for the modifying of block coverage. And I know David had, sent us some
Yep.
information.
Mhm.
So we'll have the public hearing on that. Something we always do every year to appoint election inspectors for March 21. Cindy is in charge of the elections, the village elections, so. So inspectors, it gives a different pay schedule for each, and we'll approve that at the next meeting. Also, we always do every year an agreement with Westchester County for the use of voting machines. We already talked to Nancy about the summer camp fees and the counselor rates.
If I may, I want to ask for one thing too. Everybody knows at the last meeting, we rejected all the bids for the boiler. So I went back to, yeah, you saw my email. So the idea is that there will be increase in cost for the engineer to redo the scope of work and design for different options. And talking to George and the engineer, we felt that that's the best course of action to move forward and gives you about 4 different alternatives. And then we'll hopefully see which is the lower cost to move forward on. So at the next meeting, hopefully you'll approve that change in services so we can move forward at the next meeting on that as well. So I'll send you guys an email, take a look, have any question, just give me a call.
Additional 6,000.
Yes, 6,000, yeah. And it's still way below the lower bid that we received when we originally hired. Thank you, Teresa.
Yes, no, thank you. Any comments, from the board members, any discussions or comments on anything before I go out to the floor?
I was wondering, we had spoken about the First Amendment auditor policy. Would come to fruition. We were gonna reach out to other communities, to find out what they do.
What, remind me?
First Amendment auditor, remember how people were coming in and
Oh,
filming the operations? And we weren't gonna make a policy because we were having an issue with the legality, and we we're gonna reach out to other communities and see what was going on, so people don't come in and. Any movement on it?
I provided a draft that I got from another municipality. I haven't received any, yeah.
Isn't that where the incident happened?
Yeah, it happened in Yorktown, yes. So they're working on policy as well. So I know there was some hesitation possibly, so I didn't bring it back up again unless the board wants to do something.
I don't know if there was hesitation, we were waiting for more information.
Yeah.
We
So,
need to create a policy that's in violation of people's rights.
oh. Okay,
I know that's a novel idea, but
yeah, so the idea was to not allow people to walk into private offices. That was the most, I mean, they want to walk in here, it's fine. They want to walk in the rotunda, it's fine. The idea was just not to allow people to walk into your private office and just hang out in your office, take video and action your questions. So that was the idea.
also I know you had spoken a couple of meetings ago about minimum fund balance.
Fund balance policy? Oh, yeah, I can get you.
You know, it's coming up to budget time, so if we wanted to enact something this year, should probably have it on an agenda or have a draft. Because, before we vote on it in May, and that would.
I get your draft.
Put some stuff together.
Yeah.
So,
No problem. I'll get you a draft of policy.
So we just like to just, we'll have to discuss it at the next workshop.
Correct. But I'll get you before way before the workshop.
Yeah, so Mayor, if you can put that on the next workshop meeting, to discuss that, so maybe we can get a public hearing together and create that before we adopt a budget
What?
next year.
You don't have to do a public hearing for a policy.
Okay.
Yeah, I was saying, if you want to just
Did you
adopt it,
want to? So
No, if you just want a policy, that's fine. I
Yeah.
thought we were gonna create it and make it a code so that we can use it as a part of the budget tools.
process, yes,
So that because if it's only a policy
yeah.
and for some reason the next
Well, yep.
administration doesn't want to do it.
Oh, that-
It's wasted, it's useless.
this thing will make
So it's
it
just nice to do.
Okay,
If you
gotcha.
make it a local law,
Yeah,
then,
it has more teeth.
yeah.
yeah.
And then we need a public hearing.
And then public hearing. Okay,
So that's
cool.
what I mean,
No, I like that idea.
Great idea.
I've done it in other municipalities, everything I did, they went the opposite way and destroyed everything I built. So I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, again, if it's a law, then we have to have. it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll get you a draft, yes.
Do we have a status of the property Let's Go Boutique or I know there were some issues.
I keep on reaching out again to the manager in Peachco. I reach out to him again. I reach out every 2 weeks and he passes me along to the assessor and then the assessor have to talk to him. And then he says, go to the village board or the workshop. And I even volunteered to attend the workshop meeting with the city council to talk to them. I haven't heard back, so I'll try with them again.
Might have to set up a one-on-one meeting.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, their workshop meetings are open to the public, just like their committee of the whole.
Yeah, but I didn't feel comfortable walking in at a public meeting, or maybe the city council doesn't know what's going on.
Well, maybe not you, because
Yeah.
history over there.
You're no stranger there.
They know me pretty
We do
well.
have other representatives
Yeah.
of the village that can represent us and ask us.
I'll try to I'll reach out to the manager.
Unless we think it might lead to their denial of our.
That's, yeah, let me reach out to the manager again.
How about an update on the White Street property?
Executive session.
Okay. Tonight or next month? Next week.
The White Street. The lease, the license.
Do you wanna do tonight or do you wanna do editing?
The parking spot.
It's where we're supposed to either accept
I know.
their petition for annexation or get some
The
insurance.
license,
money.
are you
Yeah.
talking about the
Yeah.
license?
License agreement.
So what was the question? You want to discuss?
Do you want to discuss it in, I'm gonna leave it up to the attorney in executive session
Yeah.
tonight or?
Yes, I would.
Tonight, okay.
So I have an issue with. I have an issue about a couple of things I'd like to talk to you guys about privately, actually.
How about any bites on the land on Blakely Avenue and Albany Post Road? Did we get an appraisal or?
The survey just came in today. We haven't received it's funny, the survey came in today. I'm gonna follow up with the appraiser tomorrow, see if anything comes in, and I'll get that over to our real estate guy, and then he'll market it. And then
So we did get an appraisal?
no, we have the survey.
We have a survey.
We have not received the appraisal yet. So
I didn't anticipate that.
I'll reach out to the
Okay.
company tomorrow.
And I was wondering, is Nancy's not here now.
Yeah.
Can we get a attendance of the how many people are using the ice rink? See if it's, if there's a value in keeping it open. Every time I drive by, I don't see anybody.
Yeah, okay.
So we can just find out how many people are actually using it.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, or 2 years ago, we talked about off-street parking changes, regulations. This year would have been a perfect time to have that rule in place where you park on the streets unless it's storm. So I know it got shot down. I was hoping, did we actually have a draft local law? Did we have a public hearing on it?
Not that I recall, no.
No.
No, it got shot down as soon as I brought it up, actually.
So,
Really?
So I didn't do it.
If it's not broke, let's not fix it, is what I was told.
Well, it's up to the.
So I
board,
probably didn't even
whatever.
draft one.
well, say again?
I probably didn't even
No,
draft
draft
one.
one now.
when it got shut down.
This year was a great example of how that could have benefited residents of the village to be able to stay on the street. There's a lot of communities that don't have off-street parking that allow on-street parking even during snowstorms, but I still believe that there's a way for us to be able to navigate to offer that latitude
Look
to
at
our
other
village residents.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah.
if we could draft something together to get that ball rolling. And like I said, some years there's blizzard after blizzard, it wouldn't be applicable, but we've had plenty of winters where we haven't had them, so it's all on the road. So I just think we should revisit that if we can either put that on a workshop agenda or I don't know if you want to put together a draft resolution or I don't know how the mayor administrator would like to just take the.
What was the board, what the board would like to do?
I would like to pursue it. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we could put something together. And what it should say is that on-street parking will be allowed and have certain caveats. So just, if you can just throw together maybe a little template and then we'll massage it in the next workshop meeting, and ask,
Get some samples.
Scott to come and, you
Makes
guys can
sense.
just talk to Scott and say, this is what we're.
And the police, yeah, we talked to both, yes.
This is what we're proposing. I know that's what we had done before. There wasn't a lot of traction, but I think in later this year, we should be able to get some more traction on that. Last year also, we had a presentation by Jerry Mincer of Smart Growth America, who offered her services to help us do some rezoning. Did she ever reach back out to us? Did we ever reach back to her?
Didn't they provide us a document from?
Oh, yeah,
She provided us a prospectus of what she would do for us, but I don't know where it ever went.
oh, yeah, that was a report they provided. Yeah, you're right.
She did give us a prospectus, and I believe we said we weren't going to go forward with it because our code was gonna be revised, as well as the M1 district was going to be revised. However, I haven't seen anything about that. I don't believe anybody has reviewed the general code, where we paid thousands of dollars to change our entire code, and that's still languishing over the last 2 years. So maybe we should avail ourselves to the services that somebody is willing to help us with. Because obviously the other stuff is going nowhere. The LWRP seems to me is treading water and drowning. So.
Oh, Nick isn't here. He would have been, somebody we could have asked about.
If I remember correctly, that smart growth, that was only focused on around the circle. It wasn't for the entire. building.
No, she had several areas.
Was it?
Yeah, she talked about the circle and she talked about other C1, C2 zones. It was actually about revitalizing, or it did include the circle, but it also included some other gateways. It was a 2-page perspective, I believe.
Yeah, let me pull,
She provided a report.
yeah, it was a report. Let me
Yes.
pull, let me email it to you again.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was a report. Maybe you missed it, but
So
let
what
me
was
guess.
her request? Did she request our recommendations? Did she want to review her recommendations?
Trying to remember, because I think the problem was that was with the grant available for smart growth. It was all had to do with industrial use. It couldn't do any kind of mixed use development. You couldn't do anything like that. So they came up with signages and pedestrian walkway. Let me get you the report that I remember. I'll get it to you.
That's part of New York State Smart Street.
Yeah.
Never adopted.
Yeah. So let me pull it out. I'll send it to you again. And then if we have to, we can always talk to them again.
That's what I appreciate. That's all I have.
Steve, have anything for us tonight?
Mayor, I'd like to request, once again, if I could get the names and contact information of the residents that were appointed to the Recreation Committee. So I'd like to get that ball rolling. think now's the time.
I'm glad you're bringing that up. There's many reasons why it's a good thing, but it's a committee I formed, and what I'd like to do is just get them started. So when we have the first meeting, I will invite you, but I'd like them to be independent. I don't want anyone putting any thoughts in their head. I'd like them to just be an independent group that, makes some decisions. I know somebody on there had mentioned something about opening up the field again for a girls softball team. I think it's throughout the town or throughout the area. And I explained to him that the problem was that, Holtec owns half the field. I've had conversations with Holtec and they might be interested in allowing us to, allowing them to use it again. Yes, I know the fence is down, but I don't think that's critical for them to play there. So yes,
They would need to do a lot of work in order to get
yeah,
that.
well, they were willing to do that too, so I don't know if it's
I
for
don't see how.
practice or really, yeah.
I don't see how.
And one of the discussions we are gonna have, it is in our code, so when we do development, there are recreational fees. So that's gonna be the decision the board's gonna have to make on how those recreational fees from the developments get used.
Yeah, we currently have the tennis courts that need something. done
Yes,
with
yeah.
A couple of other things, so
Mhm.
I'd like to get the residents' input on the
Sure, yeah.
Marcus, I had asked you the other day, I don't know if you had a chance to look into, and I'm probably gonna pronounce it wrong, but the Arts Center down in Burbank. Can you?
Yes, I actually tried, sent an email out, and never got a response, so let me follow up with that.
Okay.
They wanted to hang a banner
Yeah.
I was
down.
just wondering if that just,
It's like, they were very excited about it, you guys approved it,
That was supposed to happen in November.
yeah,
And-
But they were waiting for a grant,
yeah, I think maybe they didn't get the
grant.
grant, yeah.
yeah,
Maybe that's what the holdup is.
Yeah, I found the email, I sent them an email, and then I didn't follow up, but I'll send them again.
no problem. And the website, I've been working with Peggy, she did add a search function to the website. There are a couple other changes I'd like to see, so I'm gonna continue to work with her on that. And, So I have.
All right. Dan, what do you have for us tonight?
Really, the only thing that I came across was, and actually Steve brought it to my attention was, we're seeing some ads on social media for basically taking a home and turning it into a boarding house
Mhm.
and charging
$425
A room,
for a
yeah,
room.
yeah.
And so
You know, we're
where?
starting to see a lot of that.
Got 'em.
You can drive through the neighborhood and you can actually see
Keep
what
on,
houses
keep on.
have
Okay.
5, 6, 7, 8 cars parked in them compared to, you know, your normal 1 or 2 family home. Just not sure what people's viewpoint is on it and whether we can form some kind of a, you know, have a discussion about it, but
It's overcrowding and it's
it's-
dangerous,
it's,
and it takes away the community character.
it's changing the fabric of our village.
Absolutely. And we see it more and more in all the communities and it's affecting us.
And I was out in 2 social settings and it was brought to my attention by residents who live, you know, near 1 or 2 of these homes where they believe that's what's going on. And, you know, I think it's time to start exploring it a little bit and to see if there's anything we can do to curb it.
And I'm just gonna reiterate what I've said before about the off-street parking in the winter months. Sean, I understand what you were saying because, you know, it's been a mild winter and people are jamming in their yards trying to get all their cars in, but I think what we see, it's a clear indication when there's off-street parking that we have issues in some neighborhoods and some houses, when all of a sudden there's like 10 cars, they're parked on the front lawns, then, you know, there's a problem, Houston. There's a huge problem. You know, there's overcrowding there. Peter, honest to God, I don't know what the answer is. I know you have caught many situation with overcrowding, living in basements, attics, and we're seeing that more and more. The problem is we can't just go up to somebody's door and say, hello, can we come in? Because if they say no, we can't come in.
Yeah, but you know, there's a house maybe 500 feet from here that just had a building permit, that just got a CO. It's a 2-family house with 3 electric meters on it, 3 mailboxes with 6 names on it. You think it's a 2-family house?
Well, sometimes.
You know what I mean?
With the 3 meters, I know I have,
It's a
I have a
common-
couple of 2 families, I have to have a meter as the landlord. Or,
Okay.
So, but
Okay,
they
yeah,
probably tap
okay, so
into that.
now you have 3 mailboxes with 6 names
Right,
on it.
right, that's a problem.
Okay,
That's-
does that meet the Board of Health requirements of no more than 2 unrelated persons living in a single family? Well,
And like I say, on that, Sean, and also Steve and Dan, you were nice enough to get that information to me. We got it to Peter. Peter researched on one occasion and we were able to, Peter was able to grab. So what would be good is that if any like that information can be given to me, Peter, anonymously, Peter and Brian can go out and just see what's going on in the property. And we can work with the police department and try to see
well,
what's
let me
going
just
on.
tell you one thing, Marcus,
Yeah.
not being anonymous.
Mhm.
I did that a couple of years ago. And the first thing that resident was told was my name.
Yeah.
So you think
Yeah.
that I ever did it again or will do it again?
Gotcha. Okay. I understand.
Okay?
I understand.
Dan's just showing me this affordable, no lease, new appliances, 2 miles local, laundry inside, internet, Wi-Fi, cable TV. Wow,
Facebook.
free parking. I don't know why they put Indian Point there. I'm not sure.
They want an Indian Point employee.
They want only Indian Point employees when you call the number.
Okay. Oh, 5 beds, 3 baths, $425 a month. How nice. Okay. Anthony, what do you have for us tonight?
While we're dealing with AMS and Carbone, one object that I think needs to be taken into consideration with the sidewalks, this is not a big deal, but it is a big deal. The crosswalk needs to be put in somewhere along that sidewalk. We need to have access. There needs to be a crosswalk to any strip mall that goes on over there. The kids are just, somebody's gonna get hit over there. We gotta try and get in touch with DOT. There is a sidewalk. There is no way to put a ADA ramp, which is required by DOT in that sidewalk, so we'd have to figure something out. But maybe we can incorporate it in one of these developments.
Absolutely.
You know, so we'll try and keep it in the interest of that. The other thing is the clear path. Anything from them?
They actually are working on the escrow.
Yeah.
It was funny, called the other day and said, "Oh, Marcus, have you deposited the check? We're ready to start to an engineer."
Yeah.
I said, "Never got the check." 2 days later, said, "Oh, our mistake. We didn't send you a check." So they said the check will be in the mail to start to get the escrow so they can sit down with George.
So they're also investigating other routes?
That's
so-
correct.
So.
Yes.
yeah, That's what I heard that.
Yep.
Yeah, so, all right, good. Anything like that that comes in, I mean, I'm always interested to hear about it. I like to.
Yeah, there's been,
you know-
yeah, there was any update that they were actually
Yeah.
meeting. There's nothing planned yet. We're still waiting for the escrow agreement.
Okay,
They signed the escrow agreement, but they haven't provided a check yet.
yeah, okay, good. And the IMA? I just want to know where we're at, that's all. We don't have to go into big discussion, I just want to know where we're at.
As they say, the ball is in their court,
Yeah, I
Well,
sent it to you
yes.
guys and
and it
It
was
was
sent.
emailed to
sent.
the town?
I sent it to Richard Becker and I received a response that it was received. He's supposedly gonna be speaking to his attorney, engineer and board. So I have not heard any response yet.
and I haven't heard from Tom Wood in months.
And I haven't heard from anybody either, believe it or not.
So obviously they're doing their due diligence, I guess.
Believe it or not,
So.
that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I do want to mention something and talking about social media. A notice is out about a meeting on January 26th over the decommissioning of Indian Point and Save the Hudson River and blah, 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 blah. So I just want to say, I will be on that. I'm willing to listen to anybody and their thoughts. But I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I don't care. It's the truth. The group that's sponsoring this is the same group that worked diligently to get Indian Point shut down. They are anti-nuclear people, and everybody has the right to be anti or pro-nuclear. But they're bringing in their own experts. And so I would, anyone that listens to that, that's fine. Like I said, welcome to the United States of America. We all have the right to say what we want to say and have meetings and things like that. But I would also direct you on February 2nd at 6 o'clock. You either can go on a webinar or you can go to the town of Portland Hall.
Somebody sent me that.
The New York State Department of Public Service has a,
It's a nutshell.
they're running the Indian Point decommissioning oversight board. There's elected officials on there. There's there's experts from the New York State, their Department of Health, DEC. So you have elected officials, you have union leaders, you have a very good group of people. I had started the Citizens Advisory Panel in the beginning. Linda Puglisi had a group of people. I started the Citizens Advisory Panel. We discussed different things, whether it was spent fuel or whatever. We discussed an array of things. The state decided that they wanted to have an oversight board, which was probably better because they were able to get experts and pay for experts. The experts that they bring in are experts that are impartial experts, I think is what I want to say. So I just find it really interesting on social media. Everybody's like, what? How come these meetings have been going on since the announcement of the closure of Indian Point. They're pointing at elected officials. Basically, the elected officials are not doing anything. That is absolutely incorrect. That is so incorrect. These people that I work with on this panel, they have been on the front lines of this. We've discussed everything soup to nuts. The next meeting on February 2nd is going to be talking about the release of the water into the Hudson River. So, you know what? My statement from the beginning was, we want the safe decommissioning of Indian Point and the safe reuse of the property. So everyone's on the same page. Nobody is looking for the not safe decommissioning of Indian Point. So I just want to make that clear. So it would behoove everyone to really, the DOB meetings, they have them maybe once a month, every couple of months, and there's different subjects, different speakers, different experts. So if you want to follow what's going on with the decommissioning of Indian Point, I highly recommend that you go to those meetings or look at those meetings. They're taped, so if you can't make it that night, you can review it. But there has been a slew of people who have been working on this. Also with the air quality, there's a subgroup of that group with the school. They're making decisions on, so when the heavy decommissioning happens, what the air quality, how they're going to monitor it. So talking about air quality, so please go to the Indian Point DOB meetings. Sharon did put that on Facebook, the information if you'd like to see that. And then we go on to other air quality issues. So I'm sure you all have seen with the sheetrock plant, there's dust that's being found on 9th Street in Brookline. The dust was found to be gypsum. I know the DEC, Peter, because we don't control air quality. So our building inspector, Peter, called the DEC. He also called Westchester County. So Peter, if you'd like to continue on that with the complaints you had gotten about the dust.
The dust situation has been leaving that property for the past 10 months. We've been residents from Brookline have approached the department. We're going to address that. Going through the 72-page permit process in New York State for that the operations that land. They are in violation of London air mitigation laws and 7 with Westchester County air mitigation. Every day, the site emits gypsum dust and so on out into Brookline. And it's all over vehicles, it's on people's houses, it's everywhere. I spoke with them. They sent a representative out who cleaned one of the residents' vehicles and took us at the sampling of the dust 8 months ago. I, again, trying to keep everybody on the same page to move forward. They never responded back to the gentleman about what was it their dust, was it not? It was apparently their dust. New test. Basically, at that point, this gentleman kept complaining and complaining, and then other residents started complaining. So I contacted the Westchester County Board of Health. I said, that air mitigation permits have been violated. They sent someone to investigate that. That person called me 2 weeks later saying that they saw nothing. I have to be present on that property prior to inspecting something completely unrelated. And I witnessed the dust being created by the loader running through the material that I videoed. It's white. It's just an unending white cloud that doesn't stop moving the property. Right? It's ongoing, and I have my own pictures and videos completely unplanned for that. It just happened to happen while I was standing there. So when the Westchester County made an appointment to view it, they didn't move the machine. So of course they're not going to see anything in the property. So they said they would have to not schedule an appointment and just appear. They had not, I heard nothing back about that. So then 2 or 3 weeks of silence and neighbors complaining, or maybe they took care of it, they did not. So the company came in to try to apply for an accessory structure permit on their property. It was quite large, it required planning board approval. They were not pleased with that. They felt they could get the permit. And I, at that point, informed them that you have an upcoming problem. Westchester County Board of Health and the DEC will be notified if you don't cease and desist this air quality issue, mitigation issue. Again, nothing was done. And the residents came back in, their car is white, and they brought here to show me and pictures, and then the Brookline Residents Association got involved. I contacted people that were involved with our Indian Point conditioning. They said they were going to get right on that. And nothing came of that either. I've spoken to everyone that we could possibly speak to with power that we have to do anything, and nothing was being done. So News 12 became involved. News 12 became involved. And then now the DEC is involved. Now they got a person coming out. Now they're sampling. Now they're the building department complaining to the proper authorities accomplished nothing. And the residents are the people with the power that have to do it. They wanted us to be in charge that we cannot shut that plant down. That's a New York State requirement. They can do that. And I presented it to everyone. And now something's happening because News 12 got involved and it was televised. So they still have not stopped the dust. It's still happening. And I don't know what the repercussions are going to be. But the future project, that it was like, that then subject of central monitoring for how many months and nothing's happened there. This is happening every day.
And they're breathing the sun.
Yeah, so I don't know who else, can many of those people apply their services to the
Rezone them.
back? At this point, I don't know what else to do. The residents, right? Oh, we're fine. They've done everything we could
The
possibly do.
Department of Public Services is aware now
Yes.
too, because they're involved with the Indian Point decommissioning and the dust and whatever else supposedly. So I hope that gets resolved soon. I mean, thank you for following whatever avenues
Right.
you had to follow with that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Right.
So that's the latest. Comments from the floor. Oh, you did speak. I'm sorry. I thought I left you out. Okay, I'm sorry. I try to remember. That's why I like to
No, I'm
go,
good.
I'd like to go in a line. This way I don't forget. Any comments from the floor? Nothing for Eileen. Okay, you've spoken. All right, so, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session for contractual and personnel. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great Buchanan day.